there's just this really strong feeling that I had for both of them that I kind of just wanted us to explore, and I thought it would be really interesting to do it here. So thank you for coming, and for both Natalie and Glenn for being able to do this. So Natalie is from Peoria, Illinois, comes from an arts family. She's both a portrait and fine art photographer, there we go. She's exhibited widely, won numerous awards. You might have seen her work on Michigan Avenue in the past, so you can see much more of her cool work on her website. And one of the things that she says is that her work enables her to evoke emotions and feelings in others as well as expose mine. I love creating images that highlight my subject's strength and confidence. So there's something there, so there's a little hint of what we're going at here. And then Glenn Gauthier is originally from a small town in Louisiana, which we just discovered is down the road from my mother-in-law's small town in Louisiana. And he moved to Chicago from Dallas. How long have you been here?
5 months.
So new to Chicago. So he's a mixed media collage artist, but also a creative director for large campaigns for big name corporations. I can't remember.
Back in the day, 3M and US.
Yeah, has a variety of experiences, but I think the heart of you is a storyteller. That's what really just comes out when you look at his website. Is that. And one of the things he says really clearly on his website is that he's always rooting for the underdog. He says he grew up in a small town you've probably never heard of. That underdog mentality fuels me, never settling for good enough. So they both have, from what I can see, a real connection to identity, although explored in different ways. And so that's part of what I wanted to do, in that they both have collage aspects to their work, and they both have photography aspects to some of their work, not all of yours, but some of it. And so that both of those things kind of tie in with these really strong senses of identity and wanting to get that out there. So we're going to start with that, and let's just start with just a little bit of brief background. Where'd you go to school? What's your training? That sort of stuff. Glenn, do you want to start?
Sure. I from South Louisiana, so I've got a BFA in fine arts from University of Louisiana at Lafayette. Kind of been an artist, I guess, my whole life, but I was going to school and being like a sophomore was kind of directionless until I finally realized I should really focus on art. So I did that, went through a rigorous program in the advertising and design field, and had to get trained in that with both conceptual work and craftsmanship, like creating ads before the Mac was around. And then from there, worked in the advertising industry for the last 35, 36 years. And as far as the artwork goes, about the last 15 years is when I really said it's time for me to make a statement for myself as opposed to my clients. So it's like I've been doing this work for a long time, and I wanted to do something physical because, of course, in advertising, a lot of the work is done computer-wise, Photoshop and all of that, which I still use. But the act of getting away from a computer and hovering over a drawing table and cutting out thousands of images or whatever they are, bits of paper and glue and all of that. I love the physical aspect of it. So yeah, for the last 15 years, I've been telling more and more with every day, more of my story. It's like I figured out my style and then just really started honing in on who am I, what's my background, what do I have to say. So that's kind of where I am right now.
Great. As Molly said, I come from an artist family, so my dad is an artist, so my sister and I were kind of immersed into the art world early on, and so at about age 10, my dad gave me a camera, and from then on, I was photographing everything every day, but I didn't get formally trained until 1996. I went back to school. And just fell in love with even the technical aspect of photography, which I knew nothing about all those years when I was shooting on my own. And I moved to Atlanta, where I hung out at a jazz club, and I started photographing jazz musicians, and that's a big body of work that I do, photographing musicians. But my training from, I guess, the art background, and I went away to school originally for mechanical engineering, and it was really artistic to me because it was numbers and art. So I think everything is still really connected, because I always think, how did I get from here to here? My dad discouraged me from majoring in art, and he said, well, it would be really difficult to make a living at it. So I went into engineering, and it did the same with my sister. And it's just funny how your heart is into something that it's truly your passion, that's what you're going to do. And my sister is an artist also, but neither of us majored in art. So that's about it. I lived in St. Louis, Chicago, Atlanta, Charlotte, and have come back to the Midwest, and I really love the arts in Central Illinois. Is very, very supportive, and I majored in portraiture, so most of my my art is really geared towards evoking expression and mood from people that they don't see in themselves, and I think that's my greatest reward, is when I'm shooting a client or doing something for myself, is bringing out what a person doesn't see in themselves. And so my greatest reward is when they look at it and say, oh my gosh, this is how I feel, but I can't express it, and you've made me see the beauty in myself, and there's just something about that is so very rewarding.
And did your dad teach at the Art Institute?
Yes, taught at the Art Institute for 30 years.
So there may be some folks in the room that had him.
Oh, okay. So prior to that, he was at Western Illinois. So all my life, my dad has been an artist. So that's, I mean, as children, he never took us to a toy store. It was always an art supplies.
That's another similarity. I forgot. My mom's an artist.
Ah, okay, interesting. You don't say that anywhere.
Right.
So, great. So Glenn, you call yourself a collage artist, and you happen to use photos sometimes in your collages.
Yeah.
Natalie, you consider yourself a photographer, but sometimes you use collage process in your photographs. So how do you each think about the less common aspect of your work? Natalie, the collage aspect, and Glenn, the photography aspect. So let's start with you and how this collage part plays out for you.
So as I said, I specialize in portraiture. So I guess I focus on my photography, and I love being able to show a person's mood, as I mentioned, but the collage aspect of it, it takes me beyond just the click of the camera. I can actually build the world that I imagine by adding the collage aspect of it. So in photography, in digital photography, they call it composing, and so I can compose my own world. It's the physical aspect that you have, but I can glue it digitally. So
Yes.
I can build an entire world layer upon layer, and so it gives me the freedom to create what I want to create. So I can add that
how do you choose those collage elements?
That is, it depends on what I am trying to say. So this body of work I call portraits of nature. And so they're all portraits that I take in black and white. And there's still something just very beautiful about black and white. It reminds me of my darkroom days, and that aspect is just so pure and natural. And then I add a pop of color with the nature, and so it can be anything, any natural aspect, and I place it just according to what I'm trying to say with the piece. And it's showing our insignificance as to the beauty of nature. And so that's what this body of work is. And it's very simple, there's just two layers. There's the natural beauty of the portrait, beautiful woman, and then the smack of color is the beautiful nature piece. And then just how I decide to place it is just based upon what I am trying to say. So.
And this piece is part of a different series.
Yes, they play well together, and I show them together, but this is a different series, and it is I call it Baroque Beauties, and I fell in love with the Renaissance period because my mom studied art history when I was young, and so this is kind of dedicated to that, but it's all about, this is what I can do with collage. I can create my own world. So this is the Baroque era, and the word Baroque actually means an irregular pearl, and that's how I see Black women as being looked at, an irregular pearl. And so I say this is a thing of beauty, rare and unique, and so I call this body of work Baroque beauty. So it's placing them into a beautiful, elegant period of time in which we were not in and dressed this way, and in portraiture with the elegant backgrounds of the Baroque period, the darkness and the deep, rich colors, and so I can create that with the layer. So this is a different body of work, because with this I will I can do layer upon layer and put in other elements. And I'll show you some of the other pieces of this body of work. But that's the difference between those two bodies of work.
Great, thanks. Okay, now Glenn, it's very interesting some of what you said, because I think a bunch of it comes with yours. So how do you think about the photo aspect of your collages?
For me, it happens in a few different ways. There's the idea of telling someone else's story. So you've got a lot of folks who, over time, their ancestors, they have their photos, and they don't know what to do with them when someone passes away, and they feel horrible about throwing them away, but they have nothing to do with them. So a lot of times they find my way to my house because they know I'm a collage artist. So in that way, I'm able to take some of those people and I incorporate it into what I'm working on, not knowing their story at all. But I love that idea of the juxtaposition of someone who lived way before me, but then they're getting incorporated into this new piece that has new meaning. And of course, they had no idea, nor did their kids know that they were going to end up in a piece like this. So in that way, I feel like I'm kind of telling their story, but I'm also folding it in with mine. And there's another aspect where it's more straightforward. Like I had friends who commissioned me to do a piece because they had literally boxes full of photos of their ancestors, and their kids weren't interested in any of it, and they wanted to see, what I could do with them. So I literally got envelopes, everything was categorized, and here's this side of the family, and this side of the family. And I was able to take those elements and put those together and tell their story. And I had to learn about it as I was working on it, because they gave me written notes. So that was interesting, and that's the only time I've done it that way. And then the third way is, for instance, in this piece here, the cyanotype image is me as a young child. And so I'm the fifth of 5 kids. And there aren't a lot of pictures of me as a very young child. So I asked my mom, well, why is that? She said, well, by the time you came around, I was too tired to take pictures. So I got over that. But now I have the photos, and I like to use the cyanotype process because it's imperfect, and it gives kind of like a blurry aspect to the images. And for me, that works because it, I don't remember being a kid that young. And there is that idea of kind of reclaiming that part of my identity because I was kind of left to my own devices as a young child. Mom and dad were out doing their own thing, so it was, feed yourself, get ready to go to school, do all of that stuff. So with that kind of stuff, I'm able to bring those photographs in and tell more of an autobiographical story, I guess. And then outside of that, it's whatever collage I seem to be working on, whether it's images from a magazine, a book, a manual, whatever, or actual photos. Sometimes I'll bring in portraits, but I won't show the actual face. I'll just show like a tie or the things they were wearing because I'm looking in those instances for more of a tonal range, like somewhere in the darker, lighter areas. And I like to see the hints of people when you don't actually see the people. So there's a hint of a story there that could be tied in with mine. So a lot of times that ambiguity, I think, plays into it with the photography as well.
So you said something that made me think about maybe one of the key differences between you. So you are aiming at something that is a story with how you like a story to be. Yeah. Much of your collage work, I think you use a lot of imagery that is specific to time and place.
Yes.
So you are, when you have, whether it's these pieces, but it's like, this is something that directly connects to me at this time in this place, right? If you're doing something that relates to the 60s, you have
Sure.
from the 60s, right?
Yeah.
So yours is very content specific, your content, your context are very specific.
Yes and no. There are times when it is very specific, and
Sometimes
it's not.
when it's not. And yours is much more, here's how I wish it was.
And that is sometimes.
Sometimes, but
Well,
not always,
sometimes,
right?
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
I do
that's
create
kind of
the world,
interesting that you're in some of your works, you're telling a bit of your own story,
Mhm.
but it feels like you're telling it how you see that it actually was,
Right.
not how you wish it was.
Yeah, I think for the most part, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm reacting to being brought up a certain way.
Right. And I think you're also reacting to the world and the unfortunate reality of the world and saying, here's the correct.
Yes, that.
Yeah, so that's great. Thank you, those were wonderful. I certainly am not, and I don't know how much other people are really knowledgeable about how one does this process in photography. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like when you say like you layer, what does that mean? And then how you choose things like what paper type are you printing on? Do you do additions? Is this that is the only print, you only do mono prints, or is it I would get that same one 3 times?
So I do photography and I use Photoshop to build my collages. So I don't do the digital cutting as Glenn does. And I greatly admire that. So when I say that I am layering, that is my equivalent to cutting pieces out. So I will take a photo, say I took a photo of the young lady, I shot her in my studio, and then I will take an image. I go on nature walks, and so the nature pieces in this body of work are separate images that I have photographed, and I will take that photo that I took, and when I say I will layer it, I will add it in Photoshop. So I will name one little girl and another one moth, and then I make the composition by literally gluing them digitally. And so that's just 2 pieces, but in a piece like this, if I stitched every flower together, I could have 50 different layers. And one would say pink flower, one would say red flower, and it can take me quite a while to be happy with a photo, so I can go back and look at it and go, no, this isn't working, and then I can get rid of certain layers. I can just delete those layers and then revisit it and see, okay, when it speaks to me, then I know it's done. So it is really gluing my works together, but digitally. And I take photos of everything, and that's how I'll create layers. Like I make textures just by walking down the street, taking pictures of the concrete. And then so I have my largest folders in my system are all with background. So I can use a texture just for flowers. I can build with the textures. I can make movement with the texture. I create depth by adding textures, and so then you are pulled into the artwork because of this world I am building for you.
Gee, it's kind of like you're using it traditionally in painting as opposed to printmaking. Paintings are layers developed over time.
Yes.
And you're using the digital process in not the same way, but it's in a similar way,
Yes.
where you're gathering these layers, and you might be gathering them separately,
Exactly.
but you are archiving them and putting them far along the way. You got your categories, and then when it comes time to compose, then you can start with the background, and the middle ground, and I'm not gonna pretend to know how you
But you're
how
right.
you build it up, but you
Exactly
build it up
right.
that way. So there's a kind of a traditional link.
There truly is, and like with Glenn, going back to his childhood, I have memories of my childhood. I was a geeky kid who loved insects for and cicadas are one of my favorites. So most of my pictures will have cicadas hidden in them. So I have categories built that way. I have my insects, I have my clouds, I have my just all kinds of different things that are in several things. And the other thing that you asked was originals. I will print, and I should say I'm doing this now because I just got a huge commercial printer. So and it's changed my life. So now I'm calling those prints my originals, and now these are prints. So I am printing them on canvas so they look like paintings. So the original of this is completely different from that because it looks like.
Can I ask you the brand of the printer that you
Canon.
The Canon?
Yes, it is, I'd say, from that wall to the other side of Molly.
Oh, wow, it's a big,
What's
the diameter?
I'll never be able to get it out of my house.
I mean, obviously it's a banner. So what's the?
Huge Douglas, what did you say?
It's 4 feet?
I
I mean, the actual print, but-
Yeah.
but what's the width that you can print?
48 inches in diameter, that's
That's
one dimension.
48 inches.
Oh, no, it's bigger
What
than
do you
that.
mean, that it'll
The
print?
diameter in terms of the composition.
Oh, 44 is
It's
the
44.
one, yeah. 44 inches.
So almost-
I'm sorry,
almost-
I thought you were, yeah, it's 44 is the
It's
width.
a
It's
serious.
huge.
How did you come across that? Was it bequeathed to you? or-
No, I had to sell our.
Yeah.
I'm still paying for it.
So spread the word, these names.
Please buy these ones. But it has changed my world, I just love it, so I'm printing on canvas and they look like paintings. Yeah. And so my prints, I will do, now so I'll do what I call an AP artist proof print on my other professional printer, museum paper. And so there'll be no more than 3 of those. And my proofs from my large printer, there'll be 1 to 4 of those. And, but then in a series like this, it depends on what the series is. And I haven't done any prints of either of these. So I bet I won't do any more than 15.
So there you go. This process. So they both go through this process, right? Very, very similar processes, although using different technology. I also have noticed on your website, you do some very large pieces as well.
Yes.
So when you're collaging pieces, I mean, look, some of them look like they're huge. How does that collage process differ than, say, this one?
It's not much different. The process is basically the same. It's just working at a larger scale. It just depends on the material that I'm working on, whether it's stretched canvas or a sheet of MDF board that I'll build a back frame, gesso board, and then collage on top of that. There are times where I do use Photoshop if I'm looking for something very specific and it's pulling together other elements that works better digitally. I've done that with another large piece that I have called Time Machine, where I was able to take photos. I've got folders of photos of all these old electrical devices from all of these antique stores around Austin and Dallas, and I was able to incorporate lines from poems that a friend of mine wrote and collaborated on a few pieces. And I was able to take those lines of poetry and Photoshop them onto these gauges and dials and mechanical things to make it look like it originally had that type on it. Then I'll print that out and glue that down to the surface. So there are some times where I do some digital work, but I would say probably a good 75 to 80% is hand cut and glued down.
Okay, so here's maybe a little deeper question on this. So identity, like I said, seems to be an important aspect of both your works. Both of you reference photos as ways to either redefine or reclaim something. You make statements about your particular works, redefining how we see ourselves in Natalie's case, and for Glenn, you talk about reclaiming your childhood. Can you just talk a little bit about how the works in these shows, follow those statements, and what is that big picture? Who wants to jump? Go ahead.
Okay, I specifically with the Baroque beauties, I usually include in my statements, I talk about women and strength and resilience, and as you say, I emphasize how the world should be, and I just think it's very important to portray Black women especially in a beautiful light, and as being very strong and resilient, so that younger women can grow up and see themselves as president one day. And just know, just have hope. I love being able to give something back to my community. And so, even in public works that I have in Peoria, I make sure everything is in a positive light. And being in photography, it's just an easy translation into photo speak, because I use the camera to focus and use the light positively, and just hope to make my subjects shine, and that's important to me as being a Black woman. That's how I want my work to be seen and to be viewed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't remember the exact words, but you very much say that you want to shine a light on people who have often been put kind of in the shadows.
Exactly. I did a large body of work called Crowns and Empowerment, and it was all dedicated to, I recreated magazine covers, and they all highlighted Black women on covers during the civil rights period when we were not on magazine covers. And all of the taglines are about the civil rights movement, with women being the leaders, because we always talk about all the men during the civil rights, Martin Luther King and Andrew Johnson, Andrew, thank you, and Jesse Jackson, everybody, but the women are who pulled the civil rights movement through. Without them, it would not have happened. And so these magazines I created, every tagline highlights Black women. So it's it was just really important to me to for people to know the truth, like you said, how the world should be, how the stories should be told. I love to think that I'm a storyteller revealing the truth.
At the opening reception, when you and your wife were leaving, you were chatting, and you said you're getting better and feeling comfortable talking about your childhood, that it's not been easy to talk about it, and you're learning about getting better at it. So
Yeah.
where are we? Where are you with this? This is very much about your childhood.
Yes.
So if you could explain more about it.
Yeah, a lot of this series, I have a series of about between 20 and 30 pieces that are all done on cereal boxes and oatmeal boxes and other prepared food boxes. And the overarching theme is kind of a childhood that was siloed. So I had 4 older siblings. But I found that as we were growing up, everyone was kind of left to fend for themselves. And me being the youngest, I just thought it was normal. That's just how it went on with life. So every day, waking up, if mom's not there, then you open the cupboard, you grab something to eat. And me not being a chef, I'm gonna go the easy route and do the cereal most days. And that still happens today, actually. So having that shape, I felt like that was integral to my kind of raising myself in a way, I found. So there was that, I guess, that issue of, because I don't have a lot of images of me as a young child, and I had to kind of go at it alone. There is that aspect of kind of creating my own world. So I remember sitting at the breakfast counter, having a bowl of cereal, and reading the back of the cereal box like you do, and sending away for whatever it is, a poster, a model car, whatever. And I remember specifically sending away, I think it was $2.50 to get a model car that you could put together yourself, and I had to send away to this big city of Chicago. And I imagined back then as a kid what it was like for them to fulfill my order somewhere downtown in a giant warehouse or something. So it was that way of taking this small town that I lived in and coupled with my life, trying to figure out how to have my imagination kind of take me on these journeys. So I figured with these pieces, I'm including pictures of myself, but I'm also including all these other elements, maps and things like that, spaceships, whatever it is, that imagines life outside of my small town. So that's kind of where these are. And then this is way more specific. There's another piece here that is specific as well. And these are, stories from childhood. So in this small town we lived in, you kind of made your own fun. This is pre-internet, of course, in the 70s. So this one is terrorizing the poor guy who drove the street sweeper. We would stay up in the middle of the summers, camp out, my friends and I, and we had memorized the guy's path and which nights he passed. So we're in the middle of the night trying to stay awake, eating hot tamales and things like that, getting bitten by mosquitoes in South Louisiana. And it's like when the street sweeper came, you could hear it. And I remember my imagination just going crazy. It's like I'm no longer in the same part of Louisiana, I'm in some alternate universe. And as we're throwing water balloons at the guy, it's like time stands still. It's just this crazy sense of whatever. So I kind of incorporated elements that are kind of germane to my life. So there's these ledgers from my aunt's insurance agency that was on our blog. We were the janitors for my aunt's insurance agency, so I incorporated a lot of that stuff. An actual map of my neighborhood with my house and my best friend's house. Those are where we were, so that's where we would camp out. You ever seen the movie The Fisher King with Robin Williams and Jeff Bridges? The street sweeper approaching to me was kind of that mythical type of image. So it was a way of kind of imagining and getting myself out of my town and growing things from there. And then this is, it's an ill-fated boating incident. We sank a boat in the middle of the Atchafalaya Basin in South Louisiana in the middle of winter. So we're duck hunting, and this is a map of the basin with the river and everything kind of painted over it. This is the spot where it actually happened. We're in a boat, we sink the boat in between trees. We have to step on the back corner of the boat to see if we can unwedge it, and that doesn't work, and the boat fills with water. So I'm in the boat alone. My two friends have jumped out, and for the next 2 hours, we're taking the top off of the outboard water and using that as a bucket to bail the boat out. And then having the coldest, longest boat ride of our lives home. Barely made it out alive, but thinking about it now, it's like another element that's similar to terrorizing this poor guy. And just making kind of these imaginary stories and real stories and how they kind of coalesce. I'm still working on it because I really don't know where it's going to go, but I've got literally a series of other works that I'll create in this same format, including an ill-fated trip to the Grand Canyon where again we almost died.
So are you, like in this one?
Yeah.
Are you just, I don't want to use the word just, are you primarily simply relaying this story?
Right.
Or are you going, what the hell was my life about?
All of the above.
Yeah.
As I'm working on it, I'm trying to figure out the actual pieces and parts. What makes sense? How, what was the story? What actually happened? I found myself texting my best friend saying, where was it that it actually happened? What kind of boat did your dad have? And all of this kind of stuff. So I got a lot of the physical info from my best friend. But then again, yeah, it is reprocessing it in a way that these works kind of reprocess it. It's how did I come out of there alive? And being the last of 5, how did I make it in the world? And how did that translate to who I am today? I'm starting to see a through line of using imagination to take your circumstances and make something different. If you don't like your circumstances, change them in a way that you say things. Let's make a new story out of the reality that's there. And it's an ongoing process because I find the longer it goes, the more personal and the more stuff I'm uncovering about myself. That and early morning coffee talks with my wife.